Hi and welcome back to my channel. This is another update on The Shadow, my game project that I've been working on for a couple of months now. I'm right now in the Unity editor, and I want to approach this session a little bit differently than I usually do. I want to explain a little bit in this one about the importance of the visual design when it comes to game development. And what, from my experience, is far more important than other things that people usually think are important. And that has to do a lot with materials and textures. So the Shadow being a 2D game, or a 2D game, 2D gameplay based game in a 3D world, means that the camera is usually far away from most elements that you see in the game. So, however, you will have to be able to read the level properly. So one of the most important things, obviously, is that the player can discern what is interactive, what might be dangerous to him or her, and which are elements that the player can actually use. And that has a lot to do with textures and coloring. So in this game, what I decided to do is to basically use colors to do that. And as you can tell, I think by now, in the platforms here with these white elements that lighten up when a droid is close to them, have the function to tell the player, listen, there is an area that droids might pop up, and you can literally tell that a droid is above you, even though you cannot properly see the droid, but you will be able to see where the droid position is and plan your strategy a little bit better by the light indicator on those platforms. The light indicator here, in terms of the story of the game, means that this segment of the platform is right now the one powering the droid through its contact. Hence, which is why you see the glowing part at the bottom of the robot. So that helps the player to see where the droid is, even though the player cannot properly see the droid, and it animates the entire level a little bit. Then everything else that is interactive, that the player can access, has the typical green color. Yeah, like these fields here, the sort of computer monitors on the network nodes, or the distribution nodes, and other elements like the water distributor, the water filtering system, and the feed. Whoops, here we go. The feed controller for the propaganda panels. If they are red, like here, they are blocked and need to be hacked. The other important color in the game is, I guess you noticed it, blue. Blue in the game is the color of that mysterious government that pretty much controls everything and keeps the citizens inside, docile and passive, to protect them. So everything that is related to what I call GovTech, the government technology, the government technology brand, has an aspect of blue in it. So even down to the platforms down here, the droids, even though they might have different colors, like the security droid and that delivery droid here, but they always have that blue glowing light on their sensor. And everything else that is related to government technology has blue elements to it. So that was important to me. Even the apartment windows are blue. The apartments have not been textured yet properly, but even those are blue because they are under government control. Now, what that does is that with that overwhelming color, the player will feel that these guys are literally everywhere. And when you look at the background for those government structures here, are literally towering over everything with their blue glow, and giving that impression of them being like over in control and really like dominating everything in the society. So that is why I chose to go with that. You can clearly see what is government technology and how dominant they are. Which also means that the blue elements here, yeah, this is on the network nodes. This is, yeah, definitely GovTech, but you can access it. So that means you get access to something that is related to the government, and can try to hack it to achieve the goal of kind of basically getting the overall population out of their kind of sort of self-induced status where they just stay at home, do nothing, and waste their lives day after day by doing nothing except watching social media feeds and stuff like that. Funny enough, I didn't realize that early on. Speaking of social media, the metaverse, aka Facebook, is also blue. That completely is a coincidence. I chose blue because of the background story that I don't want to give away too much of, but it's very technology driven and electricity driven, and that is why I went with the blue color. It's just a nice coincidence that the metaverse logos and everything around the metaverse from Mr. Zuckerberg is actually blue as well. Nice coincidence. So with the texturing of everything, that to me is the most important part about designing 3D models. A lot of 3D modelers tend to use a lot of topology, like the actual meshes, and in high detail to make them look good. As I said, like the camera does never really get very close to these elements, but even though we could, and probably to some degree you will at some point in the game, it doesn't really, the topology, the detail of the meshes doesn't really matter. First of all, this is all very technology based and hard surface, so you can get away with really low poly structures, but and that is something that I teach my students right from the get-go. Texturing and materials are far more important than the actual meshes, because textures are 90% and materials, obviously because they're related, are 90% of what determines the look of your 3D model and the entire game by that. So materials and textures are the one thing that determines whether your game looks good or not and has a certain style that you want to achieve. Let's take a look at the network node that I just referenced in the editor. This is the actual model, and as you can tell, the polygon detail is super low. Let's go into edit mode. Yeah, this is all there is. And yes, it doesn't look like a really cool looking object. However, if you go back to the actual game, the textures, oops, slight lag today. The textures are what gives this thing its look, especially when you look at it from further away. And with the lighting of the level adding to it, you wouldn't be able to tell how many polygons there actually are. this is why I put so much work into texturing the elements of my game, because this helps me to determine the look and feel and the readability of the level for the player, which is super important, and a lot of people do not think about that. Instead of using polygons over polygons over polygons. Polygons are not as important on modern game engines anymore when it comes to performance. The engines can easily handle a huge bunch of polygons, but I rather save the work on and the performance and the mesh data by keeping objects simple in terms of topology, and rather have good looking textures on them, because that, as I said, is far more important. Just as a rule of thumb, 90% of your game object's look is determined by the textures, by the colors, and the materials that you use. And they also help you with something else, and that is gameplay information that you might want to give to the player. So for instance, on this one, and on other interactive things or things that you can change as the player in the shadow, what I can do with the emissive lights and why I implemented them is that you can tell the player whether or not a system is working or it has been turned off or powered down, just by changing one simple material setting via a script when a certain action has been achieved by the player, or a certain action of the player has achieved a certain outcome, and then the system just powers down. Or it's powered down and the player can power it back up by hacking into a system and activating certain parts of the level. And without any huge animation or extra polygons, I just changed this material by accessing the shader via a script and changing certain values. And voila, we have our powering down system, or powering up. Now, another thing that I've added to the level now, because I want to use this 3D world for the player, is that I've now been building a lot of different models, and I'm building models now that are more for the foreground of the camera view, and I will use the camera view to make the gameplay even more three-dimensional. This, for instance, here is a new kind of droid. This is a turret droid, and these guys will rock up a little bit later in the game. Untextured yet, I just slammed some other materials on this just to get something properly visible for a gameplay test. And these elements will try to target the player in a certain area when he comes past them and they have been activated by an alarm. These guys are usually linked to the security cameras here. Once a security camera spots you, they start an alarm, and then these guys become active, and you will see their targeting and camera system being projected into the area that they cover. And once the player runs into that area, they start shooting at the player with electricity to knock him out and drag him into back into the system and putting him into one of the apartments, basically meaning that the player has lost the game because he's now under government control and brainwashing. So as you can tell in this version already, like you have the chimneys and some windows on the roof at the top here. The performance is rather low right now because I've got the editor window open as well on a different screen. It usually runs with about 50 frames on this rather old laptop. Whoops, landed directly on the droid. So yeah, the player would be dead by now, but not in this version of the game. And here you can see the foreground element at the top here, those gratings. And I like how this gives the game a little bit more depth. Obviously, I will not make them too big and too often because they can be quite distracting from the background, but they add a nice element and kind of a claustrophobic look to the game, or claustrophobic rah feel. And here you can see the element that I just talked about, that droid turret. Go away. And also these elements, the foreground elements, also help to tell the player, wait a second, there might be a turret here. Yeah, so the player will understand that later on when playing, that as soon as something like that turns up, there might be a turret or something else there waiting for the player and looking for the player. So this whole system is, the whole system is working quite nicely already, and I can't wait to get the functionality coded into the system. So now let's take a look at some of the other aspects. So I already introduced the network node. This is basically the standard network node. There are different versions of it for different gameplay outcomes. So usually hacking these nodes will give you background information, passwords and stuff like that will help you to unlock upgrades for the drone that is surveying you, and then will give you some more features like additional hints that you can bring up in the UI that can help you determine what is what in that world. The drone can maybe carry more upgrades or more power-ups and other features that it will have. And it will also unlock different levels and different mission types. So based on the version that you're hacking, you get more of those points, more knowledge points, more background information, but they also will be harder to hack, and it will take longer for you to hack them. So yeah, this is one of the bigger one, not the biggest. I still have to build that model, but yeah, these go from the smallest one to the more sophisticated one to the biggest one right now, which has a lot of data storage and processing power. These are some of the supply node, then the output for the supply node for the supply boxes that the droids usually bring to the apartments in the city. We have the water distribution element. Yeah, this is the one in the game now with all its material glory, including some nice refraction elements for the see-through parts where the water is in. And what I've been doing over the past couple of days is building a few more elements for different levels. Yeah, these are what you've seen so far. Are the outdoor levels inside the city, but there will be missions where you go into government facilities, like where they build the droids, where they build the technology, and those will be focusing a little bit more on traps and on things that can kill the player or harm the player. For instance, this will be a railing system for a laser cutter. Yeah, you've seen that laser cutter that is based on this element in the game already, which is this one. Those will be similar. This will be a simple force field projector, which will be which will have this version copied to the other side, and then in between you will have that force field popping up that prevents the player from getting any further. This is the railway system. This is the rail system that I talked about in a previous video. That will be part of these moving droid platforms. And then we have a couple of new elements. These I designed a little while ago. These will be the elements and the platforms for inside those industrial complexes that are run by the government. This is the propaganda billboard with the feed controller. This is a new propaganda feed emitter, which will have a huge hologram at the top, based on pretty cool particle effects, by the way. This is going to be massive, part of one mission type to hack this and change it into something with a different message. These are new platform elements for outdoors, where the droids do not have access. These are not droid platforms. These are just accessible by the player. And there are a couple of new elements here for the more technological parts of the government indoor structures. Yeah, very simple. Again, as I said, texturing will be the main aspect of this game when it comes to what these elements will look like. These will be part of more the supply generating elements for supply run missions, where the player is mainly after stocking up his supplies to keep him going. And then there are a couple of very simple roof elements, just foreground elements like the chimneys that you already know, for those rooftop elements, which I will generate a couple more of as well. We will have the standard rooftops that you already know, but there will be also rooftops for the more sophisticated apartments and the newer apartments that will look a little bit more sci-fi and more modern. And that is pretty much it. So as you can tell, there's a lot of stuff that I've created already, and there's far more to come to make this whole world of the Shadow look like it's functioning and it's alive, and you can literally change how things work in those levels, which is the main aspect of this game. Hopefully by mid of next week or end of next week, I can show you a whole new level type of an indoor level with some fiery surprises. Okay, that was it from my side for this video. I hope you got something out of it for your game development, or just about for you when it comes to how games are made in particular. I will return soon with a new video. In the meantime, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell. That helps me to get the word out about this game, and enjoy your day.